This episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/SBO. Terms and conditions apply.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
We like to identify what is driving growth because as a franchisor, it's really helpful to see what other franchises are doing and what kind of outcome it is. But also, if you're a prospective franchisee, this gives you the kind of insight that you can then look for in the brands that you are investigating.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of FranCoach's Franchising 101 podcast. I am Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of FranCoach and your podcast host. Today, we have a super duper special guest joining us, and so much so, we're just going to jump right to this dude. Third straight year, we are honored to have the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, Jason Feifer, coming on the Entrepreneur Franchise 500 edition just hit newsstands or in your mailbox 2 days ago. If you don't have it, go get it. If you don't have a subscription to it, what the heck's wrong with you? Get on that right away. Jason's going to talk to us all about the list. We can't say list. You're going to hear that, the ranking and all of the different stories and trends in and around this. That's what we got in store for you today. All right. And we are back with our superstar special guest joining us for the third straight year, the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, Mr. Jason Feifer. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I don't know if I can claim the mantle of superstar special guest, but I am excited to be here for the third year. Thanks for having me.
Well, you told me you would pay me if I said that, so I thought I'd throw that out there. So
I'm not paying you anymore, but otherwise it was a good rate.
Well, two more episodes on here. You get to be into the the VIP club for the Franchising 101 podcast.
Ooh.
We've got jackets made, the whole thing. So
great! I'm excited. I will rep that with pride.
Well, yeah, it's standing around in your closet so nobody sees like everybody else. So, well, thanks for joining us and always good to talk to you. And I feel like this is literally the third straight year we've done this around Entrepreneur Magazine and the Franchise 500 edition of the magazine that just came out this week. I've got a bunch of questions for that. I always like to just kind of get to know folks a little bit, and we've talked to you in the past, but maybe there's somebody listening this week that, shame on them, hasn't listened to all 229 other episodes of the Franchising 101 podcast. Shame on them, but give us a little scoop on you. I know you've been an entrepreneur for a while, but give us the Jason scoop.
Yeah. Well, hello, everybody. If you haven't heard me before, I'm Jason Feifer, editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. What does that mean? What that means is I am in charge of the voice of the brand and deeply involved in the direction and strategy of the brand, and also often function as the face of the brand. So I'm the guy who goes out and talks. And I have been at Entrepreneur since 2015 is when I started, and 2016 is when I became editor-in-chief. And before that, I had a long media career at different magazines. But really, for me, joining Entrepreneur was a marker point in my life, not just because it's a great role and a great brand, but also because it was when I started to think differently about myself. You cannot spend all your time talking to entrepreneurs and not start to absorb their way of thinking and start to treat yourself like an entrepreneur. So I arrived as a media guy. And now, many years later, in addition to the work I do an entrepreneur. I have a number of my own ventures. I have a coaching company for consumer packaged goods founders. I have my own like media entity. I travel around and do a lot of speaking. I advise a lot of startups. It's a wide range. I produce a lot of my own media, it's just funny. I was just earlier today having lunch with a CEO of a very notable company who has been thinking about stepping out and doing some personal brand stuff in a way that she had never done before. And we were talking about how valuable it is to step out as your own entity because it is deeply complementary to wherever it is that you work. By me being public, I draw a lot of attention to entrepreneur. I think that people connect with people, not with brands. And so it's helpful to have somebody out, somebody talking, somebody engaging. And I will tell you, the more in which you do that, and the more in which you spend time with entrepreneurs, the more exciting life becomes, and the more you just start thinking really, really big. Yeah. So I love juggling many, many things. And of course, entrepreneur has gotten me deep into the world of franchising, which I've come to love too.
Well, and I don't think you mentioned owning one yet. Jason, if you need to find a good franchise, I know a guy that can work with people to help find them the best franchise. So just
you do?
Yeah.
You can put me in touch with someone?
Yeah, I got somebody, right?
Okay,
so
good.
You want somebody good, I'll point you in the right direction. You want somebody bad, it'll be me. So
okay, got it.
And you are also been doing the podcast thing for a long time. Right. So we've got that. And then you politely hit it, but I know you just over a year ago published your book too, correct?
I did. I had a book come out. It's called Build for Tomorrow, an action plan for embracing change, adapting fast, and future-proofing your career. Really comes out of the lessons that I have learned by meeting with and learning from the most incredible entrepreneurs and leaders in the world. I've discovered that they all have developed a unique personal relationship with change, and that unique personal relationship enables them to grow and build in ways that others can't. So I wanted to understand what it was that they were doing. How did they build adaptability into their everyday operations? How do you move forward knowing that the thing that you do today will not, like definitively, will not be the thing that works tomorrow? And then how do you use today to, as the name of the book suggests, build for tomorrow? So yeah, that came out in September of 2022. It's actually been some time now.
Oh, it's been 2 years.
Yeah, can you believe? But the reception was great. And for anybody thinking about writing a book, I can tell you, it is extremely hard. It is grueling. It requires you to call in every favor that you have from people. You will be deeply disappointed by the result, but it will still produce incredible opportunities, which is exactly what happened.
Excellent. Well, very cool. And the Franchise 500. This is we had to like get some fingers and toes to do all the math on this, but we're at year 46. Is that correct?
That's right. Year 46. And that is pretty wild. I obviously haven't been around for all 46 of them, but every once in a while, somebody will show me an old edition from the 80s or 90s or something. And it's always hilarious to see, because everything about everything has changed in the last 46 years, right? I mean, when I'm looking at magazines, I'm just realizing how the style of magazines and the design changed. Some of those other old covers were ugly, but also you think about franchising, and those early days, we're probably talking about tanning salons and Blockbuster Video, and it's different days now. But that's why doing this every year is so fun, because seeing the shifts that are happening in franchising is, number one, really great for anybody who's interested in franchising, but also I feel like franchising is in many ways a bellwether for markets at large. And so like what's moving and shifting inside of franchising tells you a lot about the world.
Yeah, no, and there's a couple of things I know we want to talk about, some of those kind of niches and trends, and even just in literally the 3 years, like still the notes from 2 years ago when we did this, of like some of the things we talked about, and like, oh, that's a new niche, and this is a new one. There's new ones this year that have popped up that are really kind of now like probably don't even, it's almost like you don't realize it and then it's there. But what are some of those new things and new niches and new categories that you guys have really found in franchising for this year?
Yeah, so really interesting. So what you're talking about here is in our terminology is categories. So and when I say we, credit where credit's due, really Tracy. So Tracy Stapp Harold runs this show every year. She is the keeper of the system and the builder of the list, which is not to say that Stacy is making any editorial decisions. This is entirely data driven, but she is the one who operates it. And Stacy, once we have identified the 500 that'll be on the ranking, she starts looking for how to categorize them all, because we want to make them easily searchable by category. And I should say that we're also categorizing unranked companies. So it's ultimately more than 1,000 companies that we're ranking. And so as certain, what you might think of as trends inside of a category start to grow, they need their own category. They don't belong inside of. So here, I just give you a real world example. So real estate franchises have been around for a long time, but lately real estate investing franchises have started to grow. And as we see that happening, we say, we've reached the point in which real estate investing deserves its own category. And those moments are, I think, interesting, not just for a wonky organizational reading, but because they start to tell you a lot about where emerging growth is. So there were 4 new categories that we highlighted in the magazine. There were more than 4 that took place, but I wanted to zero in on 4, and I'll just tell you what they are. So number 1, autism treatment services. Really interesting that is growing enough that it deserves its own category. The other, I just told you, real estate investing. Also, self-pour bars now has its own category, because there are enough self-pour bars out there that we can't just lump them in with regular bars. And then finally, hydraulic hose services. God bless franchising for building businesses out of every little niche. And hydraulic hose services now has its own category, because that is growth. You're seeing growth there too. So what we always love to do when we see these things is make some calls and say, what's driving that? Like, what is happening inside of the economy that's creating this specific opportunity? And, what you end up seeing is a lot of logic and a lot of shifts in technology or consumer behavior or opportunity that then is leading to entrepreneurs saying, hey, there's a great franchise opportunity here, which then eventually, of course, trickles down to a new category in the Franchise 500.
Yeah. And what's I think really impressive and cool about this is you get things that are brand new, self-pour bars. Like, again, go back to the 80s and think about what that would have looked like in one of those in those magazines, right? Or and then industrial and hydraulic hoses and our pals over at Pertec, right? With that, it's like, well, that's stuff that's always been around. It's never going away. It's always, you get the new cool thing that may have a wave, and then you got the things that are just always around, always here. It just they become more and more prevalent moving forward. So it's there's always, I feel like there's something for everybody in franchising, because there's so many different opportunities.
That's right. And here's what's super interesting also is that analysis that you gave is great, but let's not forget, sometimes something has actually been around for quite a while, but is having a moment now. And to be able to recognize that and get in on it early can be a great opportunity. And self-pour bars is a perfect example of that. The technology for self-pour bars, and for anyone who doesn't know what that means, in other words, instead of waiting for a bartender to pour your beer for you, these are places where there's just a tap where you can go and fill your own drink, and then through some kind of tracking technology like RFID enabled taps, they know exactly how much you're pouring and therefore how much to charge you. So that has been around for a while, right? Like, that is not new technology. I remember working at Fast Company. When was I even at Fast Company? More than a decade ago, and writing about that as an emerging thing happening in bars. So why now? Why now? And the answer is a combination of a couple of things. Number one, wage and labor expenses have increased rather significantly in the last year. Anybody in business knows that, or not just the last year, but last couple of years. But then also, so that's now a strain on businesses as they pay for their staff, and we've also gone through some labor shortage issues recently, and so sometimes it's hard to find or retain the staff. And then you combine that with a refinement of the technology. So it's been around for a while, but now it's becoming even more sophisticated, which means that it's even easier to use. And thanks to increasing sophistication into gathering and processing of data, the kind of data that you can pull out of these systems now and then utilize in your marketing and loyalty programs and so on is even more sophisticated, which makes it even more appealing to open something like that. So here you have a technology not as old as hydraulic hoses, but still not brand new, but it's having a moment right now. And if you can see those combination of factors combining for great opportunity, then you can move fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think just the efficiency of the business model of, I'm sure none of us have ever been to a bar and somehow we got the bartender to, maybe give us one on the house. There ain't nothing on the house with the self-pour, right?
Nope.
So again, from a business owner standpoint, we've streamlined staff to a point, and there's not a lot of waste from, here's a free one on me. Again, really is great for the bottom line for businesses.
Yeah. And, you could say, this is interesting because you could say that the free pour, although there's technically some waste there, is also an investment in future returns, right? Because you're building loyalty and all that. And so maybe you lose that. What you gain, however, is convenience. And if somebody, like, I cannot go to a bartender right now at a regular bar and just say, hey, can you just fill this up halfway? I'm only actually feeling like half a beer right now. But you can do that at self-pour bars. So you don't have the bartender who's giving you a free drink, but you can have a lot more of a customized experience, which can also build loyalty.
Yeah. And again, we've just all gotten to the point, we want what we want, when we want, how we want it, right? And so where's the style? Like, let me just walk right up there and refill this. So
yeah.
Very cool. What's so let's maybe go back to the rankings for a second because this is not like an insignificant amount of work that goes into this, right? This isn't just some random person going, yeah, these are good. Or I think the perception of, hey, Jason, if I pay you a whole bunch of money, will you put us number one, right? Like that, we're not slipping any money under the table. Like that doesn't go on. So there's a ton that goes into this. So can you kind of share a little bit about all of the data that goes into figuring this out?
Yeah, absolutely. Very happy to. So you're absolutely right. You cannot buy your way onto this list. I mean, the irony of even saying that is that a lot of the brands on the top 10, like, the top 10 is mostly gigantic brands. Culver's tends to show up on the top 10, which is more of a regional brand, but because they just have such great economics and almost no closures and a number of other things that they do great. But a lot of these big brands, it's funny, like the Taco Bells and the McDonald's of the world, they're very happy to be on the list, but they don't need it necessarily. And they're doing just fine without showing up at the top of this list. And so sometimes, we found, not with Taco Bell and McDonald's, who've both been very responsive, but I found in the years past, sometimes a large brand will get on the top 10, and then like I have trouble getting someone from the company to get on the phone and do an interview because it's not a top priority for them. So that just shows you, like, you cannot buy your way onto something like this. The people who are on it sometimes don't even, just not a high priority there.
Hey everyone, I wanted to take a quick break from our podcast to tell you about our amazing friends at Entrepreneur. If you're looking to become a franchisee or simply learn more about business ownership, and guys, let's be honest, you're listening to the Franchising 101 podcast, so we know you have some interest in this. And I really encourage you to go to entrepreneur.com to check out all of their great content and resources. Seriously, Entrepreneur has everything, all the way from a bookstore to the best podcasts, webinars, and videos, plus information on upcoming events and the latest articles that seriously, they cover all aspects of franchising and business ownership. If you're having trouble deciding which franchise is right for you, Start with Entrepreneur's renowned Franchise 500 ranking, which highlights the best franchises of 2022. For 45 years and counting now, Entrepreneur has been and continues to be the most widely recognized and respected authority in the franchise market. Digital and print subscriptions are available, so you never miss out on anything. So seriously, what are you waiting for? Go to entrepreneur.com right now and learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Hey Atlanta, Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
It is. Sorry. As we're talking, this will come up probably a couple times in our conversation. So I'll just flag it right now as I'm doing it, which is, so you and I, we're dropping this episode after the Franchise 500 comes out. We are recording it about a month before that. So you and I are talking in
You're
mid-December.
giving away trade secrets, Jason. Everybody thinks this is live right now when they're listening to it.
Well, that would be foolish. They should love that you work ahead of time. You are prepared. You are polishing, so you make sure that the content is sparkly and new. I mean, hell, a magazine starts making the production starts like 3 months before you see it. So anyway, so this is a little time warp. You and I are speaking on December 12th right now, and that means that this issue for Entrepreneur is not finished. We are not done making this issue right now. So instead of having a magazine issue that I can refer to as we're talking, what I'm actually doing is as we're talking is I'm looking through. We use here's some real back end special sauce. So we use Trello. Trello is a great organizational tool. Yes. It's sort of like the digital version of sticky notes on a wall in columns, and that's what we use to track every page. So every story in every issue of the magazine gets its own little card in Trello, and then all the different people have to review. Did you read it in first proof? Did you read it in final proof? I click my name, et cetera, et cetera. And so whenever I'm going to review or refer back to a page, I have to go find it in Trello. So that's what I'm currently doing. Because what I wanted to do was find, and maybe I just can't do this as I'm talking at once, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to find the breakdown that we have of exactly you know what? I can just grab this from behind me. So we look at more than 150 data points, and because it's 150 data points, I can never remember them all every year, which is why I want a reference point. And so I'll give you, okay, now I got it in front of me from last year's. So let me give you a list. So we're looking at 5 categories of data. Those categories are costs and fees, size and growth, support, brand strength, and financial strength and stability. And then inside of that, we're looking at all sorts of things. So let's just break down support. We're looking at things like training times, marketing support, operational support, franchisor infrastructure, and so on. We want to understand open and operating units, growth rate, number of closures. All of that stuff is then fed into an algorithm, and the algorithm changes from year to year as we make tweaks on what we think is not just most important editorially, but is really what is the best tell of brand strength. And then out of that comes the Franchise 500. We have data that is collected from July 31st. So the data, and this is because it takes so many months to make this thing. So the collection point when we're talking about the past year in franchising, what we're actually talking about is July 31st, 2024 back to July 31st, 2023. And so that gives you a sense, this issue comes out in January, and we closed data collection in July, and the rest of that time was just work, making sense of all the data, processing it through our system, and so on.
Gosh, I got a headache just thinking about all that.
Oh, God, I'm so glad I'm not the one doing it. I just get to talk about it.
Awesome. And so all of that goes in, and then you've got like thousands of, or certainly well over 1,000. I feel like last year was like 1,200 or something. Franchises actually submitted stuff, and maybe it was more than that. But and then that gets whittled down to the top 500. But you've got kind of like, again, basically there's even a bigger list than that. And I know at some point, and maybe it's this issue or there's another one that comes out later, where you get into the categories even deeper with this. So there's tons of information that goes into figuring it out. And again, my gosh, 5-6 months of just the sorting through all of the data is crazy. Anything else? We talked about some of the new things that have popped up, or things that are like, this is their moment. Have you noticed anything over the last year that's maybe like, ooh, maybe we're on the downhill? Mentioned like Blockbuster back in the day, right? But anything like that that's kind of taken a little bit of a backseat that had its moment in the past?
Oh, that is a really interesting question. We tend to look at growth and we don't spend as much time looking at what's dropped off. So I don't have a ready answer for that. What are you seeing that maybe is a little past its prime?
I think the cool thing with this is there's always two things. One is like all of the information is, I always want people to come back to realize is just because it's, number one or number 1,000 or whatever, doesn't mean it's the best or the worst for each person. This is such an individualized process. But the tried and true, like unsexy things, like again, the industrial and hydraulic hoses that people may not think about. And you're like, I can't spell hydraulic. How could I own a business in that? And then what you realize with the franchise is like, they don't need you to do that. They need you to run the business and see those type of things. And you mentioned the self-pour, and you think I see some of the new shiny objects. Pickleball, right? I don't know if there's anything pickleball related on there yet, but if there's not this year, I bet you anything there is next year. Well, that's been around forever. I don't know how somehow the pandemic a few years ago created this craze with that, and so the self pour. Then you see even like the soda shops, right? Those are growing in popularity. And like, well, Coke's been around for 100 years. How do we now have 27 different versions of it at a soda franchise, right? And that type of thing. But the piece, and I know we talked about this last year, and maybe this came up this year too, is how technology continues to evolve in brands that have been around forever and ever, or industries that have been around for forever. Like, everybody likes to talk about AI, but there's a lot of franchises that have nothing to do with tech, but have great tech platforms. And again, I'm guessing somewhere in there that's kind of come up for you guys as you're seeing new ways to innovate old things. Last year, I know there was an article even about Taco Bell, some of the things that they had done to kind of continue to improve a brand that was already really strong.
Yeah. A lot there to unpack. I mean, with AI, certainly we're seeing AI usage in all sorts of ways, super interesting stuff, right? I mean, from putting cameras in retail spaces to identify, for the busiest times and where inefficiencies are in operations, and then being able to adjust on the fly. That's really interesting. You're seeing voice AI start to show up inside of drive-throughs. That's pretty cool. I think, with AI in particular, my line on AI is that I think that AI is a microwave oven. And the reason it's a microwave oven is because a microwave oven is incredible technology. Like, try to explain a microwave oven to someone from 100 years ago. You just can't. Right. And it's like a box and it heats. It doesn't make sense. And yet, even though we have this amazing technology that does this amazing thing in all of our homes, we don't cook every meal in the microwave. And that's because over time, we figured out what the microwave is for and what it's not for. And we are in the early stages of that process with AI. So we are still very much in experimentation mode. We're trying it on everything. We're talking about it as if it is going to do everything. It will not. We're going to find that it's really useful for some things and not useful for other things. I think a lot of what we're trying to do now is these big splashy ideas, or everyone's going to be talking to AI all the time. AI is going to take over all of our processes. It will not do that, but it will certainly find its way into really interesting moments. And I am seeing a lot of experimentation in franchising with that kind of technology now. And I think that's really exciting. And I think if you and I were to talk in 10 years on our 13th annual conversation, then I think we would say, it was so interesting that everyone thought that AI was going to do this, but instead it's actually just become this kind of interesting secret sauce to boost efficiency at retail and to do XYZ other thing. And that's all awesome.
Right. Or it leads into something we don't even know is a thing by 5 years from now, right? Like it's and I could be wrong, way off on this, but I feel like it was penicillin was like founded because they were like playing with something over here, and then it turned into that, right? And I think with the technology, a lot of that's the case. Like we think it's going to do this, and then again, like you said, 10 years from now we talk, you're like, hey, remember 5 years ago when all of a sudden this popped in and was the big game changer and not what we thought now.
Right. Yeah. I think that the famous story about penicillin is that it was either kind of accidentally discovered, or if it was for something else. I can't remember, but I can tell you what a similar story that I know well, which is that in the days of coal heating, when you would heat your home by coal, there would be soot from the coal in the air, and it would collect on the walls. And so a thing that people needed to clean their walls, or everything that people needed in their lives was some kind of tool to clean their walls, which they would just do on the regular, right? It's kind of funny because now you think about it, like, no, who's doing that? But back then that was just a regular thing that you had to do. And so there was a company, I can't remember the name, that did very well for themselves by creating a kind of putty that you would roll along the wall and it would just pick up the soot. And so it was very convenient. And then you would throw the putty away and buy some more putty. And then we innovated, and we were able to heat our homes with gas and other means. And so we did not need the coal in the homes anymore, which meant that there was no longer a use case for this putty to be rolled along walls and pick up soot. And so now this company is sitting around trying to think, like, well, what do we do? We have this thing, and it basically doesn't have a use anymore. And one of the company's executives was a school teacher, and she started to bring the putty into class. And the kids started to play with it. And she said, I think that this is a great toy. It's non-toxic. So if the kids put it in their mouths, it's not going to hurt them. And it kind of takes interesting shapes. And I bet if you made it colorful, that it would be a great hit. And so they rebranded it as Play-Doh. And that's where we get Play-Doh. And these kinds of shifts that take place in consumer needs and consumer behavior happen all the time. And sometimes the solution is something completely new that is invented out of thin air. And sometimes it is actually just a shift of an older solution to a new need, or a rebranding of something to fit some kind of new opportunity that unlocks potential.
Yeah. And I know there's going to be automotive brands listed in the Franchise 500. And we'll hear this sometimes from people like, oh, the EVs, and like, okay, well, these are brands that have been around for 50 years. Like they've evolved from the catalytic converter to whatever came after that, to this, to this, to this. Like maybe they have that, kind of the foresight of where this industry is going a little bit more than us as like random consumers. But I think that goes back into part of the things I enjoy in the magazine. Yes, there's the ranking, and that's the easy stuff to read. But there's some great stories, and I mean that like genuinely from, well, here's a brand, and maybe think less of what the it of the brand is and get the story behind it. Or here's a newer franchise, but oh, look at the team behind it, right? And again, I know there's you guys talk about oh my gosh, Zoom and Grumman, right? And then you're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's a little bit newer, but I see where they're going, and even some of the things within there, the kind of the evolution within. We're already doing this, but we see a path here and here. So you see that vision, and then you kind of see the leadership team and go, oh, okay, yes, this brand's a little newer, but there's really strong like thought leaders in franchising behind it. So I highly encourage people to do this crazy thing called read and not just look at the list with this, because you guys do such a great job of pulling out those stories, because it's so key in for people finding that best brand for them. So I just personally, I love those stories and really encourage people to read them. I do this for a living for over 10 years, and like I learned something about one of the franchises that's literally in our inventory from reading these articles. So it was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah. The Zoom and Grumman, great name, is in a story that we do every year, which is that we look at some of the brands that made the largest jumps on the list, either going from unranked in last year to having a nice solid spot in the list this year, list ranking. Tracy, again, just to throw back to Tracy always corrects me, rightfully so, because I keep using the word list, and it is a ranking. It is a ranking because it is in order. It's not just a random list. So forgive me when I keep saying the word ranking or list and then try to correct myself. But when we like to do this because we like to identify what is driving growth. Because as a franchisor, it's really helpful to see what other franchises are doing and what kind of outcome it is. But also, if you're a prospective franchisee, this gives you the kind of insight that you can then look for in the brands that you are investigating. So are they thinking like these brands that are making large leaps? Do they have this kind of asset set up? I mean, I'll read you, it's interesting, Zoom and Grumman. So Zoom and Grumman was acquired in 2021. Back then, the business was about 12 years old, struggling, had just 2 franchises and 4 vans. Now it has 134 units, is joining the Franchise 500 for the first time and debuting at number 280. And one of the things that so I'm just going to read from this piece here about like what's behind Zoom and Grumman's growth. So he being John Hewitt, who had acquired the business. So he recently acquired Salty Dog, storefront, pet salon, and bakery. Is opening a pet waste removal franchise, and these kinds of brands are now able to share information about customers, but between them, so that he says our largest office does 5,000 tax returns. Well, those tax returns, an estimated 3,500 of them have pets. So we cross market to our other companies. Very few organizations do a good job of that cross marketing. He has a company that does tax returns. I guess I should have said. I expect that we'll have 1,000 franchisees by 2029. Okay, so anyway, sorry, I'm just kind of reading from a piece that clearly we haven't published yet, so I haven't memorized all the main points of it. But what you see there is the incredible value of having sister brands in different categories who are then able to identify opportunities to further serve that customer base. So you wouldn't naturally say, users of a tax prep service are natural clients for a dog grooming service. But, actually a lot of them are, because if you know which customers who came to you for tax prep also have dogs, well, those people need solutions. And if they're very happy with you and trust you because you did a great job with tax prep, then they're going to trust you for the dogs too. And so if you're looking at brands, then one of the things I think is worth thinking about is what's the constellation that brand is in, or how is that brand being smart about and having some opportunity and advantage in customer acquisition.
Yeah, I think we always tell our clients there's what the 3 most important things are in finding the right fit. And it's never what people think. But the third is just that the franchisor themselves, the people, the leadership, the vision. Do you feel like you're in the right room? Is and everybody's going to have a different opinion of what that essentially kind of family you're marrying yourself into with that. And so that's hugely important that you're going to see maybe one's got a really narrow focus and that's perfect for you. And the next one's going to be more visionary and you can see all of the things or the support or the sister brands, all of that. So I love the stories behind it. And I can't stress enough to all 7 of our listeners out there that are going to like also pick up the magazine, right, is to like really read the stories, because that connection with the franchisors is incredibly important in this. Jason, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you and I could talk about all of this stuff forever. Anything else maybe kind of about the magazine in general, Franchise 500, that you want to make sure we really get out there and we share with everybody today?
Well, first of all, it is always great to do this, and thank you for having me once again. As we bring number 3 here to a close, what I wanted to do is, if I could just find it really fast in my Trello, is give you a couple just like stats that we put together some version of this every year, and it blows my mind every year because it just tells you so much about franchising. So I write this in the very beginning of the issue. I said, what do the best franchises in America look like? Here are a few answers based on our Franchise 500. And then we just, with Tracy's help, master of data, went through and just looked at like, what's the oldest and what's the newest brands on this list? The oldest is A&W, which started franchising in 1925. Still going, still on our list. Amazing. Or they can be as young as Spark by Hilton and Lawn Pride, both of which started franchising in 2023 and our newest entrance to the ranking. It's interesting. We have 8 brands on this ranking that opened before 1955 and 93 that opened since 2015. So you can see it can be incredible, truly incredible staying power in franchising, but always room for new entrants and always room for new ideas. The franchise investment is all over the map. The smallest or the lowest that we have is $1,945. That is the most affordable franchise investment in the ranking. That's from Cruise Planners. And the most expensive is $190.9 million to start, which is if you want to open a Hilton Hotels and Resort. So if you ever wondered how much it costs to start a hotel, turns out it's a lot of money.
Will they take a check? Will they take a check? Do you think?
Yeah, I think they just take an IOU.
Yeah,
so just totally
fine.
Yeah, they're very casual over there.
Yeah.
Just scribble it on a piece of paper. It's fine. So also the size of the franchises varies widely, right? Like we often the biggest brands can get the most attention, but let's not forget, we have brands that have fewer than 100 total units open. There are in fact 85 companies on this year's ranking that are 100 or fewer units open. And then there are 11 companies that have 10,000 or more units open. So it's a really, really broad range. The point of which is to say that there is no one right way to do franchising. There are infinite options at infinite price points, at infinite scales. And the question is really just which is the right one for you. Yep. And if you have $190 million, then we know which one is the right one for you.
Yes, it is FranCoach. I will sell it to you. So make you a sweet offer. No, super cool. Jason, so thank you so much for coming on, and we can find, well, this is the last month, but this wonderful magazine, if you do not subscribe to it, why not? If you're not going to their website, why not? There's literally a commercial for Entrepreneur on every single one of these damn episodes. So get over there, get that, and again, not just the franchise stuff, because if you are even remotely thinking about becoming a franchise owner, guess what? You're an entrepreneur, and there's just tons of again, I like there's not one part of this, and I'm old school. Like I know I can get it online, but I pick this thing up and read it every single time, and I'm always getting some good stuff out of there. So and just once with the really cool famous people that you interview, Jason, can I like tag along and just like I'll be your assistant for a day?
Oh yeah, sure. Just like awkwardly lurk in the corner. That sounds good.
Yes,
Nobody will mind that at all.
No, it won't be at all creepy. So, well, awesome, Jason. Thank you again for coming on and sharing all of this stuff. And let's do this again next year. All right.
Hey, looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks again to Jason Feifer for joining us once again on the Franchising 101 podcast. And check out the Franchise 500 edition of the Entrepreneur Magazine. It is just packed with great information on franchising. And in general, their magazines are always like tons of great information. So be sure to pick it up if you don't already have your own subscription to that. When you go ahead and read it first, then reach out to us because we're going to help you now sort through all of the stuff. Because again, there is so much to go into franchising and so many different options. Maybe you've got that 190 million for the Hilton Resorts. More than happy to help you with that as well. But remember, our team here at FranCoach, we are always here for you. There's no fee for our service. We're here to help properly educate you on franchise ownership so you can figure out what's the absolute best thing for you. That's what we're here for. FranCoach.net is where we are. Also, don't forget every Friday night, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Biz TV is our TV show, the Franchising 360 show. Here in a couple weeks, you might see that dude again because he's coming to join us on TV. Also exciting. So thanks for tuning in as always. And we look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks.